There has been some absolutely colossal news enveloping the football world recently, and it all surrounds Italian footballers, specifically Sandro Tonali. He's just one of three that are caught up in this massive scandal, and a lot of Newcastle fans don't have a clue what's actually going on and what it could mean going forwards. So I'm going to run you entirely through what's happening with Sandro Tonali, why it matters for Newcastle United, and some potential knock-on effects. First off, we need to discuss gambling in Italy on the whole, the general gist of what it's all about. And it's a complicated one. First up, it's important to note that it's not illegal to gamble in Italy on registered platforms. That means anything that is sort of registered with their gambling authority, you're fine to gamble on. All well and good. However, footballers gambling on football matches, as with anywhere in the world, is massively frowned upon and not allowed. That includes everything under the FIGC Sporting Code, which, off the top of my head, covers all matches organised by FIFA, UEFA, and their associate members. That includes the FA, the Italian FA, all of those groups. That is basically all of football, in essence. And there are big fines and prison time that you can get for unregistered gambling in Italy. That's very important to note because that is potentially going to be very, very important later on in this discussion. This is because Italy have a big issue with gambling and gambling addiction, and they've even gone to the point of effectively banning all advertising of gambling across the country. I know this because I work for a international sports broadcaster, and I've had to read up on, I think it's called the Dignity Decree or something like that, and find out all about this law and the way that you basically cannot advertise anything relating to gambling in a positive sense. You can say, we have this new product, but you can't tell people to use it. You can say the odds for a match if a user asks, but you are not allowed to actively do so. It's very weird. So now we've got all that background covered. What's actually happened with Sandro Tonali? And it started on the international break where he was interviewed by Italian police. Now, reportedly, this is all part of a big investigation into gambling on illegal betting platforms. 3 Italian footballers were all involved in this, including Sandro Tonali, I think Fagioli at Juventus, and I'm just going to scroll down and make sure I know what I'm talking about here. Nicolo Zaniolo, the Aston Villa player. Probably not good being investigated by the police for these matters, because that shows that there is some evidence behind it. And the important thing is it's the illegal, unregistered betting platforms rather than any other ones. This means that rather than just coming under the FIGC's regulations, which says that, yes, you're legally allowed to bet, but you will probably be banned from football for a bit, this is also under the Italian law. You can get fined up to, I think, €500,000 and potentially 3 years of prison time for breaching these regulations. So it's a very, very serious thing to do. And Juventus's Nicolo Fagioli has already been banned because of this investigation, which is a very, very serious issue. I think it was specifically the Italian FA that led the ban rather than an international body, but that could potentially come in the future because we are still very early in the investigation. Nicolo Zaniolo is also under investigation at Aston Villa, so this could hugely affect that club as well, although Zaniolo, I think, plays less of a major part at Villa than Sandro Tonali does at Newcastle. Tonali's agent himself says that Sandro Tonali has a betting illness, I think was the specific wording. I'll just double check to make sure I've got that completely right. Betting illness or gambling illness. He's described it as an illness. So it's important to note that his lawyer himself is not saying that Tonali hasn't done these things. There is definitely some credence to all of this discussion and the investigation, because otherwise his lawyer would be denying it. He's instead working with the authorities. That shows that at the very least, there is a probable ban incoming for Sandro Tonali. Not good for Newcastle United at all. They need a very deep squad at the moment. It'll probably bring Elliot Anderson into the fold because he's a fairly young, promising player. But he's not Sandro Tonali, and you need a lot of depth at the moment in the Champions League and the FA Cup coming up and the Carabao Cup still ongoing. I can't quite remember if Newcastle are still in that, but the Premier League is another rigorous challenge for Newcastle to deal with, and losing Sandro Tonali for an extended period of time will be a very serious problem. Ultimately, what does this mean for Newcastle United? I think they will need to get busy in the January transfer window. There's one very obvious move that is very likely to happen that could affect Manchester City as well, and that is looking at Calvin Phillips. Calvin Phillips hasn't played in the slightest at Manchester City, and he fills that defensive midfielder role fairly well. He did at Leeds anyway. He's not played too much at Manchester City. He's done it well for England before. Whether or not he's still good enough at the moment is in question, but I feel like that is a move that just makes sense. Newcastle's reputation will also likely take a little bit of a dive because there's already the issue of the Saudi ownership, but to add a big gambling scandal to that with one of their newest signings is a problem. And they've lost a lot of value on this player as well because future potential buyers aren't going to see him and go, actually, I could buy Sandro Tonali. That would be a brilliant investment. It's probably not going to happen. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. If it is something to do with a gambling illness and addiction, then obviously I hope that Sandro Tonali gets better because it's not something that people deal with very, very easily. It's a big problem for a lot of people's lives, and I understand that being banned from football could just add to the problem, but it feels like something necessary because he was also betting on matches that his club were involved in, reportedly. A big issue. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe. I will see you later.